Tell me a little bit about you, Mercer, because you go hard in the data, the facts. You drill in. You're pulling this stuff up. I haven't seen this kind of discourse, this kind of scholarly work in a long time. So let me just thank you for that. And it seemed like it took a long time to put this all together. What was your impetus for actually doing this book?
It did take a long time. It was about a 10-year project. I mean, I was doing other stuff in the meantime. And my impetus was there's this myth generally about banking. So I'm a banking law person. I started on Wall Street as a banking attorney, and then I moved into the academy just studying banks. And there's this myth that if people just pull their money together, communities, right, grassroots, we have this idea that we're this nation of, where if a community pulls their money together and coordinates, then they'll grow wealth. And that's how people get rich, is saving their money and working with their community and all this stuff. And what I see as a banking person is, no, money is created by the federal government. Money is pumped out through the Federal Reserve, and money is, made when you get a subsidized loan through the FHA, right? So the middle class makes money through the FHA, through the GI Bill, through these subsidized loans, and then the corporations get money through the Federal Reserve monetary policy, through corporate law, all of that stuff. And then we tell poor people, poor communities, save your money, deposit your money at a local bank and join a credit union. And when we talk about poverty, we talk about financial education and, actions, personal decisions and community decisions. And so my aim as a scholar is to kind of lift the veil on that broadly. And so I actually didn't mean to write about Black banks. I wanted to write about immigrant banks, small banks, credit unions. In my first book, I kind of covered that broadly with the same theme. And then I just started looking into Black banks, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is like the most perfect illustration of just racism embedded in the monetary policy and the legal policy of this country, and then repeatedly telling the victims of this entire system of extortion and extraction that if they just worked harder and saved more and stopped buying stuff, that they would have the wealth. And so the book actually ended up being much different than I intended to write. I intended to write a banking book for banking people, and it became about the racial wealth cuts. I did not know a lot of this stuff. I did not know. I spent time in the Nixon archives, and looking back at it, I could have written an entire book just about the Nixon administration.
And maybe you should. Maybe you should. Mercer is here. Mercer Barandaran.
Yeah.
The book is called The Color of Money. And as you were telling, and the reason why I want to have you back on more frequently, but I wanted to just kind of understand you. So I'm glad you gave us that framework. I'm watching people are, outraged about looting. They're outraged about looting. And I'm like reading your book. Looting is as American as apple pie. I was floored when I saw the numbers of people who were just released from bondage, just fought in a war to free themselves and this nation. Black folk put $2 million into a freedmen's bank and got it stolen. And it happened over and over. I don't know what it takes to save $2 million when I was in bondage just 2 years ago. Nickels and dimes, we're talking nickels and dimes and pennies to scrape together to save. And it's just gone because people did not value their lives, their work, or anything, and they could just do it.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
You actually don't have to go that far to talk about looting. You could go to the subprime crisis and on, right? The last 10 years have been Wall Street looting over and over again. We don't call it looting because it's legal. And that's the difference, is because who makes these laws? But when you send lenders to Black and brown communities to charge higher rates on purpose, to sell people property where if they were white and if they were in another neighborhood, they would pay way less for it. And you take that property from someone through a reverse mortgage, you don't disclose all the information. And then when you get bailed out as a bank, when the whole thing goes bust, you take the money, right? This is all sort of, you did something bad. Here's your TARP bailout. And, as a remedy, you should help homeowners fix their mortgages. This is just revealed in the last month, where banks actually, instead of working with homeowners, foreclose those homes, kick those people out. So, if we're talking about looting, like fundamentally, the economic system has been extracting from Black communities for hundreds of years. And so I think when we talk about looting, we mean lawless, that you are taking property and you didn't bother to go to Congress first.
I mean, even the land grabs, right? How the West was won. And I was floored too. I didn't know this. We've talked about 40 acres and a mule all the time. That was promised to Black people, blah, blah, blah. And it was a certain number of Black people. I didn't know that those folk that actually got land had to pay for it. There's a notion that it was just literally handed over to them. They had to pay for it. And then a couple of years when harvest is about to come, it's taken from them and given back to the people who put them in bondage. Please speak about that.
Before one season was over. I mean, it wasn't even, they planted, and by the time they were able to take out the crops, the land was taken. And I want to be clear about why, right? It wasn't that 40 acres and a mule died because of the violent Southerners. It did. But it was also the worldwide cotton market. So this is the North, this is Great Britain, this is the supply of cotton was threatened. Because what had happened in Haiti, in the Haitian Revolution, was when the freed slaves in Haiti took over the country and got land, what you do when you have land is you grow food for your family and you grow a little bit of a cash crop so you can pay your debt. You would never grow all sugar or all cotton if you had land. But the Liverpool merchants and the New York sort of industrial merchants needed that cotton to be priced very low. And for that cotton to be priced low, Black freedmen had to grow it. And you couldn't get them to grow it if they owned land. And so that land was taken for the markets. It was looted. And by the way, it was meant, the Southerners had been treasonous, right? So the options were, should we cut off their heads, right? That's the price of treason, right? Should we cut off their heads or just take their land? Those were the options, right? And what they did was, you know what, here's your land back. And so they re-enslaved often the same families that they had enslaved for hundreds of years. They were now sharecropping on that same land. So it really wasn't a transition. And you had Liverpool merchants saying, you know what, actually, the cotton prices are just as good now post-Civil War.
Wow.
It was the markets demanding it.
Did those people that paid pennies or whatever, because the price was very low for the 40 acres, but they had to pay something, did they ever give them their money back?
No.
Okay, just want to be clear.
No, yeah.
Marissa, sorry. Yeah, I was just going to say, Karen told me that you were going to come on today. She told me yesterday, and I got your book. I got the audio book, so when I walk my dog, I can listen, and then I come home and I'm reading. So I actually just finished the Freedmen's Bank section, but I kind of want to just ask more broadly, what are some of the conversations that you've had as a result of publishing your book?
I've had a lot of conversations. I get invited more often than not to bankers, groups of like at the Federal Reserve or the regulators or more sort of groups of people who understand finance. And I've just been shocked at how many people work in this stuff and had no idea about these stories. And then I've been so touched and amazed that so many. This is not a book that got a lot of publicity because it's a academic press. I got, no reviews, nothing. I wanted to be academically right. And so what you do is you sacrifice some marketing. But I've just been really amazed that it's gotten some word of mouth kind of recommendations. And I had been nervous. The population I was most nervous about reading it were some of the Black bankers who might sort of have a different opinion. I interviewed every Black banker that I could get to get this. I wanted to get it right because I'm an outsider, so I didn't want to be speaking to their experience, but they gave me a reception that I feel like was unearned. I had one of at the convention of the Black Bankers Association a couple years ago. I went, and one of the bankers said that he just kind of like wept because he had all of these problems with his bank, with the regulators and with the deposits and with the liabilities, and he just thought he just wasn't doing it right. So he said when he read my book, it was just this it was, and I felt just devastated when I heard that, but it was good that group received it. I haven't gotten a ton of pushback just because it's such a new field. I think I hope more scholars get in and start digging in, and some of them will definitely prove some of the things I did wrong, and that's great because we just need more work here. Since I've written a book, there's been a new book about Maggie Walker. It's called Banking on Freedom that is excellent.
Oh my God. Maggie Lena Walker. Yes.
Yes. So that's by Shanette. I just reviewed it. It's a great book. And there's been a couple other books that I think give flesh to the story that I was trying to tell.
Let me just say,
yeah.
No, thank you. And thank you, Sina, for pronouncing her name correctly. It's Marissa.
Marissa,
thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I want to be correct. As you're laying the story out, you grow up in a country where your skin is not right, your hair is not right, your people are not right, you don't behave properly, you have all of these things that you have to work through your psyche. And that story you say about a banker, weeping because you're saying, I'm doing all of the right things. That's what I keep reading in your book, The Color of Money. I'm doing everything. I'm working. I'm saving my money. I'm putting away some. I'm saving my children's money. I want to buy property because this is what America says I should be doing. Booker T. Washington, this is what America says we should be doing to be considered dignified, to be considered worthy. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And then it gets spread throughout the world that black people are lazy and they're stupid and they don't know how to manage money. So we can't give them this because they're childlike and they can't be in office. They can't be quarterbacks. They can't do these things because they're not mentally prepared. And you have debunked all of that in this book. Let me ask you, as a woman raised in a home, and I'm assuming that your parents came here from another place. Maybe they didn't.
They did.
What were you told about black people? What was the conversation in your home? Because we're having a conversation globally right now.
Yeah. So I will say my mother was an Iranian revolutionary, and so she in Iran in the 1970s, the Black Panthers came to Tehran to do a global worldwide revolution. So my mom, we were raised in a house where the struggle amongst the colonized and Black Americans was similar. And so my mom went to prison for most of my childhood because of her outspokenness with the regime. So I've always felt like there was, and when we came to America, we always lived in the bad neighborhoods with Black and brown folk. And so I was not taught that I was different or anything or better or that the Black people were lazy. I was not taught that, but I see that from, so I will say the pushback I have gotten hardest are from the model minorities. I have been at big meetings and the person who is the most vicious toward me is not the white person, is not the Black person. It is someone who looks like me who says, well, what about Asians? And we work so hard and blah, blah, blah. And it really is a weird thing that we tell people like me, immigrants, like, oh, American dream, whatever. I came here, both my parents were college educated through a public education system. Iranians, right, do this. Public education. My dad was a doctor in Iran. There were bad, I certainly had like a growing up experience that was rough. But I saw my Black classmates and there's no immigrant experience that compares to the Black American experience. I have never been threatened by a cop. My parents have never been, none of that. But, and I think with Muslims right now, post 9/11, certainly, and when I was growing up, there are different things going on, right? I mean, every racism has a specific flavor to it, right? So anti-Semitism is a different flavor than Islamophobia, but the Black-white thing is so fundamental to America that I think people just maybe stop seeing it. It is every race is measured against anti-Blackness. I think that is the thing, and worldwide, I think it is an unfortunate tragedy.
Thank you for that. Reading this book freed a lot of the things. Like, I knew in my soul, something's not right. I got a subprime loan with great credit and with a piggyback. And I'm like, well, maybe if I don't check black, they still know. And I was like, it can't be, they can't have it in the system to do this. And you say, Marissa, they definitely have it in the system to do this. How do we overcome that? What's the solution?
It's structural, right? So they sense lenders, and the lenders actually, they don't care if you're black or not. It's just, do you live in a black neighborhood? So blackness is coded into property values, as is whiteness coded into property values. So you can use a zip code, you can use a FICO score. You don't actually need race. And so all of this talk about like, let's all treat everyone fairly and let's, unpack racism and whatever, like, forget that. Like, we just need capital policies that allow people who live in certain areas to grow wealth. And the way that we do that is we have to depeg equity from race. And it's a structural thing, right? So you do reparations that is holistic, right? So you do what we did for white Americans during the FHA, which built the American suburb, which built well-funded schools, which had the GI loan, which had all of this stuff together, and we created wealth for a generation. We did the Homestead Act. That created wealth for a generation. We do that for Black Americans. It's not more than whites had. It is equal. It is what everyone's had until now, and we just need to do that now for Black Americans.
Marissa, there was an interesting part in the book where you talked about the Italian immigrants when they came to America, and they were just Italians, and then they had their own bank, and they invested in this bank, and then that bank ended up becoming part of Bank of America. But part of the reason for that, right, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that they were able to assimilate into what we would call whiteness in America. That can't happen for Black people in America. So how does that same model kind of apply here? And what would happen? Do we have to redefine what we think of as assimilating into America so that these community banks can get into the more broader capital markets?
Yeah. So that is a key point here. And Nell Painter's History of White People is excellent. She's a Black scholar who's kind of unpacked this. And whiteness is not a thing, right? Whiteness is a construct, and it is anti-Blackness. So whiteness is determined as not Blackness. And so we value you based on how close you are to whiteness. And what happened with Italians and the Irish is just this fascinating display of this, right? Because Italians and Irish weren't white, and now they're white. And the way that they became white, I think, is through inclusion into these FHA loans. Is once you're able to get this FHA mortgage and live in a white neighborhood, your race kind of goes away. So this is where you can see a hopeful story and you can see a tragic story. The hopeful story is, a whiteness whiteness is not a thing, and it can expand into a non-thing. The sad story, and I think this is more likely, is we keep talking about this majority minority, this demographic split that's going to save us. Like, once minorities become the majority, we're going to have a non-racist nation. And I think what's going to happen, if you look at history, is whiteness is just going to expand. Like, whiteness will take people like me and Asians and certain Black people, right? And it will leave, whiteness will expand. That's how power works, right? Power will maintain its power. And if whiteness is power, which it is, it will get softer and it will get bigger. Like, softer, I mean as in less obvious. And so you just really have to track that evolution of racism in a way that it's just sneaky.
And if you're even Black and you get accepted into whiteness, because we see that some entertainers are accepted into whiteness. Right. Kanye's white. Kanye's white. Kanye West is white now. That there's no pushback, because you rather be in that space of acceptance than to be on the outside of it. So you're not going to fight it if you get accepted into it. If you're a model immigrant, if you're Asian or Persian, you're going to not be mad about being accepted, because that's what you came here to do, to fit in. You change your name, you change your name from Marissa to Mary, or, Sina to Sam, and you speak very well, and you go to the right schools, and you do all of the things that America says makes you American. Yeah.
I mean, the Italian, there's a story, I think I put it in the book, about the Italians knowing they were white when they were invited to go to a race riot in Harlem.
Yes.
I mean, this is horrible, but to be violent against black. So you do see minorities. I mean, look at Dinesh D'Souza or Candace Owens. Like, some of the strongest enforcers of white supremacy are brown and black people. I mean, truly, like, how much better can you be? I mean, like, misogyny. I mean, some of the strongest forces of misogyny are like the Phyllis Schlafly's. Like, this is the way the power works. And so I think it's a really sneaky problem. And I think it's one of those things where people say, well, listen to people of color, listen to black people. You're like, not all black people. Like, don't listen to, like, Clarence Thomas's views about, race, or Candace Owens' views about white. Like, she denies racism. And so you can get a black person. And I think all minorities have this conflict where I feel like I could have this, like, soaring career if I were the person who was like, bomb the Middle East, like, conservative, whatever. Like, you really can get a lot of power within the structure by working against your people's interests broadly, to break solidarity. Mm-hmm. That is a market value, and you could be very rewarded. So I don't know
Michelle
what to do
Malkin.
about that.
Yeah, Michelle Malkin. I mean, Larry Elder, Jesse Lee Peterson. I mean, there is wealth in that market that you're talking about. Let's take one call. I know you have to run, Marissa, and you're going to be back frequently. Hopefully you'll have to make time for us, because I think this requires unpacking. I don't want to just do these one hits, and thank you for being a part of our special on COVID. Let me go to Michael and Callie. Welcome to the Karen Hunter Show.
Hey, Karen, how are you doing?
I'm good.
Thank you for your voice and all the good news and all the good people that you bring on. It makes me so much educated. Yeah, I got this thing that came off of Push Black about the richest colored girl in the world, and this predates right around the in the state of Oklahoma, and she was deed some land because of some rights came across, and she had to go into hiding to hide her wealth and keep it from being stolen and stuff like that.
Yeah, I saw that. I've seen that story has circulated. And there's a whole great book called Black Wealth by Shamari Wills. I don't know if you've read it, but Marissa, you talk about Madam C.J. Walker, and that's the only correction I have. And you talk about her. No, because before her, she only became Madam C.J. Walker because of Annie Turnbull Malone. Annie Malone was actually the first black self-made millionaire, and Madam C.J. Walker stole her formula.
I did not know that.
Yeah, had her husband. Her husband was a marketer, C.J. Walker, and he was also a traveling salesman. So she was able to get that formula out. But Annie Malone was very wealthy, and very powerful, and she made a lot of black women very wealthy during the Great Depression, during a time when black people could not even make money in any other way. But the way you frame that story, that was an area white people they didn't have the appetite to get involved with. So black people were able to flourish in an area of hair care that white folks weren't being involved with. And they made a lot of black millionaires, not just Madam C.J. Walker and Annie Malone. There were a lot of black people that got wealthy during that time. But that was it. Yeah, but thank you for
changed,
that.
By the way. Black hair care is now owned by majority white shareholders. Like, once they found a profit, they took over. But yes, a lot of these markets, and this cuts against the lie of, like, black people being lazy, like you were saying, or non-entrepreneurial or whatever. Like, where there were market gaps, black people found them and they made millions. I mean, imagine making millions during Jim Crow for finding the one place that was open to you, and then just really kind of soaring. And so this idea, I mean, there were, Jesse Binga is another example, right, who was such a successful banker, a wonderful banker who gets, quite frankly, like, screwed by the white institutions that he thought he could rely on.
And Sarah Rector is the richest colored girl in the world that he was talking about. And Mary Lena Walker, her bank survived the Great Depression. It got taken out by the 2008 crisis. That's how she's dead. But her bank survived everything, including civil rights, the Great Depression, and it got taken out by the housing crisis. So
Yep.
So there's that. I know you have to run. She's got to run.
Thank you. Thank
but
you
we're
so
gonna
much.
we're gonna continue the conversation. Come back, please. The Color of Money
will.
is the book.
Thank you.
Mirza Barandaran.